And we are live. Welcome aboard, everybody, to episode 1. We are here at the CDC remote studios. So we want to welcome you in. If you are live, we've got our compatriot Nils Nelson sitting in on the chat room. So please give us your feedback and your questions, and we'll address those towards the end of the program. If you're joining us archived or on a podcast, please enjoy the content and welcome aboard. So let's get to it. All right. Our contributors this episode are two gentlemen that were at the start of this crazy journey, my fellow founders of the Championship Darts Corporation. Firstly, he is an Emmy Award winner, the man that oversees the rising cost of a vowel. He is the style of the CDC. Ladies and gentlemen, L. David Irete.
Thank you very much. Good to see you. Good to see you. Good to see you. And
he is a St. Elmo Steakhouse card-carrying MVP member, the hardest working man in darts, the CEO of the CDC, ladies and gentlemen, Peter Citera.
I'll take the steak over the Emmy Award any day of the year.
Oh, come on. I mean, I think an MVP card at St. Elmo's trumps an Emmy any day. That's a little inside baseball. Welcome, boys. It really is a blast. And there was no other place to start than the three of us, because that's where it all started, right? I mean, the most comfortable place to be is me, David, and Peter, just talking CDC. And that's kind of where we want to kick off tonight, is talking about, we're rolling into the 10th year of CDC. So it's just sharing thoughts and recollections on a decade ago, sitting around essentially at a tournament, looking at a napkin and trying to, what is this thing going to be? And so, how do you guys see what we've been through and where we came?
Oh boy,
David,
Peter? Are you still thinking about the steak, Peter?
That's generally what's forefront of my mind, the steak, and I've got a green tea here instead of a martini, but I think I'll make it through the night.
Well, and I've got an apple and some nuts, and I'm thinking about that salmon or the swordfish that I might be getting at one of those fancy steakhouses you take.
But think about, so go back to, we had we sort of joined forces. We were working on different projects, and my pitch has always been, we got a chance to see what wasn't working, and we really wanted to take a stab, but we thought what would work. So I know we all, what's made us work, I believe, is that we all bring a little something different. David's expertise in one area, my part of the company, and Peter's leadership on a lot of things. So, what from those areas did you envision? Where did you see us in a different place 10 years on? Are we better off, worse off?
I'll tell you that, my situation, as you know, started back in 1979. And as I discovered the sport of darts in Las Vegas, Nevada at the World Cup 1, I think. And that's how I got introduced to the darts. And it turned into me for the next 20 years, videotaping anything I could videotape and come to darts, North American Opens, all the Royal Hawaiians and all that stuff. That's a whole other chapter. But what got me to you guys was the fact that I no longer had that desire to work with the amateurs. Not saying I don't like amateurs; they all come from being an amateur. But I realized that I could not promote the best of three, and the only place I'm going to do that is get to the long format. And once the long format was established, we got together with Sharon and some people like that, and we got, next thing you know, we're doing something different, long format competitions, and that's how I met you two guys. And to find two guys that were just as passionate about this, yet understood how to do a bracket from every which way but loose, sure. I knew I found partners. So I mean, I could tell.
But I remember us talking about from your area, from production. You talked about in other scenarios, it tended to be, well, this was the event, and okay, here's David as a tag along. I'm going to bring my camera and I'm going to set up, right? So obviously you can tell us that, things haven't gone perfectly, but part of what, you wanted production to be an equal partner in the company and in the venture, right? In that, it's not only a dart tournament, but it's an event, and sometimes it's a show, and we wanted it to be an equal partner in the venture, not just, hey, we're going to put this on, and oh, by the way, we're also going to send pictures out.
Right. Well, I think I understood that. The bottom line is I no longer wanted I wanted to put something out there that people really want to watch on TV, because by the time I met you guys, the PDC had been in town for 10 years or close to it, and I realized that we really have something here. And so it just happened. So bringing my expertise, trying to do the darts and cover it. I've been doing it, even though all the North Americans and all those tournaments, I have the whole TV dart guide. I've got several tournaments that could be just classics right now once I put all the tapes together and re-edit them. So understanding how to make a show came natural to me. And I've always talked to everybody about how to cover the sport. When you cover the sport, you have to cover it in a certain way. The dartboard on the, over here, and the players and blah, blah, blah. So I think I'm going the right direction here with this conversation. I'm just trying to say my stuff is the
Sure.
expertise, but I'm into entertainment and coverage. I got stories.
Yeah, it's about, like, and Peter, Peter was the ultimate road warrior, essentially. There's not, I think truly, Peter, correct me, what has it been, roughly 15, maybe a full 2 decades that, if there's been a high level, long format, PDC, CDC associated event, Peter Citera has not missed it, so there was that expertise and business savvy that we needed to bring to the venture. So, It's just about your perspective on what you thought this thing was going to be. Hey, is this going to be any good? Is this not going to, I mean, obviously we thought it was going to be good, or else we wouldn't have, launched it. But
from my perspective,
go for it.
You asked if this is where we thought we'd be. You start something like this in your first year, it's like, are we ever going to make it to the second year, right? We started with this great grand plan that we're going to send somebody to the world to the world championship and have a new world champion from North America. I've still got it written down by 2022. Exactly. Well, here we are in 2024. I always like to tell people we're 10 years into a 3-year plan. Things evolved. I'm really, really proud of what we've created, obviously, right? There's been a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that's gone into it. It's, some of it's been public, some of it hasn't. But there's been a lot of trying to evolve and shift and shape and adapt, and that's one thing that I think I'm most proud of, is that we do listen and do try to change things. It's got to make sense for the players, obviously, to play. It's got to make sense for us, obviously, as a business, and it's got to make sense for the sport in general, right? So there's 3 things that we really have to answer to, but we always are trying to make things better, always are trying to evolve, and that's what I really most like. In terms of, again, is this where I saw us in 10 years? No, I would hope we'd be paying out $500,000 to $1 million a year, right? That's the ultimate goal, but that just, we're progressing in that area slower than I'd like, but we're progressing, and I think that's the key. You got to keep the eye on the prize. Anybody who gets 10 years into a business and tells you that they are exactly where they wanted to be is lying to you. That just it doesn't happen that way. There's curveballs. There's things that come up, but overall, the ability of us to create a plan, execute the plan, change the plan is certainly I think what keeps us going.
Well, I mean, you touched on that. You sort of like not downplayed it, but about, hey, we're going to set a lofty goal of trying to have the next North American champion. But that was another conscious effort. We were like, let's set those lofty goals. Let's set those goals of creating a next world champion, players, somewhat earning a legitimate living off of the sport of what we put on, getting to a broadcast standard, and getting on outlets that maybe sports hadn't regularly gotten to. So we wanted to shoot for those big and lofty aims, right?
Sure. Yeah, of course. Nobody make no small plans. That's kind of been the way we've looked at things. And to be fair, when we started this thing, where really was darts in North America, right? It was certainly at its nadir, its low point, or just coming off of its low point. I mean, you could probably put a pin in the map or in the timeline and say the low point was what happened after the Mohegan Sun, if you really want to get into that, right? And you might want to do that later, but you kind of had to put a flag in the ground and say, all right, we're going to start from here, and we want to be at the top of the mountain, and so we may as well just got to get started. It felt like we were pushing the boulder up the hill. And David, I'll get out of your way and let you get back in here in a sec. But we kind of feel like Sisyphus. And I've used that example before, right? The Greek mythology guy, the guy pushing the boulder up the hill, right, up the mountain. And every time I think we're going to get it to the top of the mountain, we're going to get it over, and it's going to start rolling, and it's just creating its own momentum. Something happens to set you back. And then at that point, we got to make sure we hold it and don't get flattened by the boulder. And so, that's kind of been the last 10 years. It's been an amazing ride. I wouldn't trade it for the world. Contrary to what you might hear me say sometimes in meetings, I really do. I really do love what we do, and I love working with you guys. So.
And just there was another component in there that I missed. We consciously sat there a decade ago, thinking about something that is just about to come to fruition, and we'll touch on that in a few minutes about the possibility of gaming. But we sat there, another component of like, let's shoot for that. Let's shoot for the idea of compile a database that will be able to give somebody a legitimate track record. Let's build a track record. And so as you said, it's another sort of component of what we've been really proud of. And along the way, we've, cost David, a lot of heartache on our production places that we stick them, and this hall and that hall and that sort of thing. But through it all, we've put out.
We did not put ourselves, when we were our first couple of years or events anyway, we tried our hardest to not go too far because we didn't have the means to do that. As far as commentary, we had some pictures, and we figured out a way to put it on the internet, because the internet wasn't as easy as putting in a code and your live streaming 10 years ago. It was difficult. And the equipment was a lot more expensive, and it was changing every day like it always does. But we were able to get on the air, and we slowly showed people, and that started giving us other goals. And that was working with the players themselves to turn them into broadcast kind of guys. Your Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde speech that you give during the player's brief is amazing, because they got to shut up when they're here. But when you bring them onto the feature board, we want you to get excited, and it's hard to do. So, all the little things that we're learning about, everything from how to put on a tournament to technically speaking, it was a challenge, and it still is a challenge every time we do something.
It definitely is a challenge. And I remember you talked about, knowing from a production standpoint, hey, you guys, meaning me and Peter, you got to get the darts right first. We've got to get the tournaments right. Got to get the darts to get better, because if the sport is not going well, then there's nothing great to broadcast, right? So it's another thing, certainly Peter and David, that we're very proud of is the standard that we've come along in a decade, right?
The success there is I mean, the numbers don't lie, right? When you struggle to have people hit 85 in the first year, and now we're routinely seeing high 90s, 100 averages. The standard of play is light years ahead of where it was. The darts are amazing, right? And it bears itself out internationally too. I mean, you got Stowe Bunce that makes the quarterfinal of a PDC major event, right? So it obviously is translating into success at the highest levels of the game.
Yeah.
So then
It's
now
working.
let's kind of touch on what what we've seen succeed and what that hopefully is starting to build really foundations of now as we go into year 10, the potential, what sort of we talked about. Peter will, I'm sure, go into some detail on we're on the precipice of actually having gaming, being able to wager on CDC darts. In turn, you want to offer more and more fancy events, right? To wager on. So you've got an expanding tour, and even more expanding as we go on, hopefully, and then turning over more and more spectator showy glitzy events for Mr. Irete. So I mean, that's where we sort of sit coming into year 10, a little expanded tour, right, Pete? And the ability
going to
to
14 events
wager
this year, it could have probably gone to 15. Really excited, happy we landed at 14. I'm not criticizing that decision, but we're at 14 events this year. I can see us expanding again in the future. There's potential to do that, I think, and I think it's real that can and will happen. I'm not going to divulge too much here at this point, right? It's all planning stages, but that's obviously the goal, is to keep this thing growing in both frequency of play and, of course, in payouts.
Yeah, and that goes to that tent pole of putting more and more, or giving the opportunity for players to earn more and more prize money as it continues to grow, and it is a sort of cyclical thing that the better events we can get to put on, the support of the people showing up, leading to sponsors, gaming leads to sponsors, and that leads to money for the players and stuff. So now from David's standpoint, we're in our second year of a cross-border. We're going to touch on that in a few minutes. We've got our second cross-border coming up. So we've doubled our efforts in terms of spectator events, trying to put on something that people come, have a really good time, to just enjoy the atmosphere and the sport, and then also to sort of put those bells and whistles on that you don't normally get to do week in, week out, as you put the grind of the circuit, right?
Right.
And
I would
that
like to
sums
say,
up.
well, hold on a second. I got when you were doing the intros, by the way, you said something about me taking care of the vowels. I know that's a joke, but I want to let you know where I am right now. I'm in Jim Thornton's sound booth, overlooking the stage. I just got through working, and we came running up here to do this. So when it comes for looks and surprises and things like that, I just wanted to make sure people didn't think I was the producer of the show. We got brand new producers at wheel. Fortunately, they're doing great stuff. Big changes coming to the show. So I just wanted to get that out of the way, just in case somebody's watching.
No, certainly, exactly. I mean, that's what we're talking about. What our sort of real lives are about. Those are the components that we bring to CDC and add to it. So no, I mean, I want both of you to and myself to talk about that stuff. So that was just sort of a little inside joke about the rising cost of the vowel.
No, it's good, but and I asked,
eggs, bread, and vowels.
Okay, I got close to asking Pat, but I didn't, because another joke came up about if he wanted to be in this podcast, because the last time he did a podcast with me with the darts, we were in Jamaica or someplace, and I had him. I think it was Darts Around the World, and that cost me $2,500 because it not giving him the money. It was the Wi-Fi at the hotel. They charged me, and they couldn't get them to reverse the charges. So he's expensive. Anyway, but
you're in the sound booth there, David. You got to do the Jim Thornton voice. Wheel of Fortune. Here we are at CDC.
Oh shit! No, I got a magnet on it. I can't move that right now. Sorry. No, we
got a bleep button on this thing.
No, Jim was.
No,
Jim
this
was
is free for all, everybody. We're all adults here. Let's let it fly. We're not going to insult anybody, but we're also not going to restrict anybody. So, what are there any other recollections? I guess I've let you talk, and I want to hear more. But I'm thinking back to there. there are special moments in my head, sitting in Atlantic City, going over what we think this thing can be, and do we dare do this? Do we say anything to anybody? Like, what's the best way to approach it? Because, in all honesty, we were, I guess the word coming to my head, subordinates to other people, and respectfully so. We were all given great opportunities by other people. So this was the first time that it was like, do we take the reins on this? Is it about time for us? So I remember those moments, and I remember, being at one or two other events, kind of like, pulling some players aside, taking a temperature. What if there was a tournament that ran in such and such a fashion, and let's say, what if this and what if that, and sort of just kind of see what you got back in their eyes about, that sounds like a real crappy idea, or, all right, I think I can get on board with that.
It was time. It was time for us. The PDC was not going to, do as much over here or whatever, unless they had something to do. Jay was retiring and all that. So there was obviously a lot of obvious things that were happening. And it was a good timing for us. We did the New World Dart Series, and it went for a couple of years, and then it was us. And we're making it work. And I'm super proud of it, and it works because we have all the components. We got a CEO who acts like a CEO, and you got a production guy who acts like whatever he acts just to get the shot, to make it look good, and you got the guy.
And this kooky dude.
When you do your bracket things and how you're trying to figure things out, it's like a whole different language. So, and now Jeff as well is involved in it and things. And so it's just putting all the pieces together, and it's working. So,
yeah, you asked about memories, and there was a point in time where we kind of just sat around at each other, looked at each other, and said, "All right, we're going to hold hands and jump." Or we not, yes. That was exactly what it was. Are we going to hold hands and jump? And I vividly remember that. And we obviously held hands and we jumped, and and here we are. It certainly isn't a project for the faint of heart. I'll tell you that. There was a time. Oh, this was back in 2020, right? Back in the pandemic, everything came to a halt. We were trying to put on this TV production. We were working with a real kind of top level guy who had ins with the networks, and we had actually gotten to a point where we almost were signing a contract with CBS Sportsnet to air this. To this day, we haven't really talked about that publicly, but to air this tournament that we were qualifying people for, and we were trying to do things behind closed doors, and try to get around restrictions to get these people qualified to play in this tournament, this tournament of champions, or champion of champions event, or that type of thing. And I was talking to the guy. We were having a meeting, and he goes, I'll tell you, there is not one better way to either go broke or eat away your stomach lining than promoting a niche sport. And and we've been close to doing both. I'm on pills today. I wasn't on before, for acid stuff. I had hair when we started this thing, but no.
Ladies and gentlemen, Peter Citera's doctor. Come on in.
That's right, exactly. No, I'm older now too, but I'm glad we held. It's a long-winded way of saying I'm glad we held hands and jumped. I don't know where this thing ends. I don't know if anybody knows where this thing ends. But if you look at what people were saying about us when we started this thing back in 2015, it'll never work. These guys are insane. Who's going to play? This is stupid. Well, and you can just hear it, right? And obviously, David, as David said, you never read your own press, right? He mentioned that to us. It's a sound advice, but you can't help it at some point, right? So you're sitting there kind of seething, just like, why can't you see the big picture? Why can't? And nobody likes change. That's the thing. Nobody likes change, right? And so what we represented was change, and so you kind of see the little bit at that. You're like, well, fine, we'll show them. So we get through year one, and then we get through year two. It's like, oh, they'll never make it past year two, and then we made it past year two, and then the stuff kind of started to quiet down, and then we got into kind of what I called the sweet spot, right? Year 3, year 4, year 5, and now people are starting to look at us like, well, you're a leader. Now what are you going to do? What's next? And and that's something we have to be conscious about. Again, you can't stop innovating. You can't just stagnate. If you stagnate, you die. So we have to find new ways to do new things, change things up, kind of figure out what the future looks like. And we've done that, right? We introduced the youth, we introduced the summer series. We're trying to just introduce things as they make sense. Some things succeed, some things don't.
Yeah, well, we survived during the internet, the pandemic, when I think we were the first ones to actually do an official league online. We had the weekly shows, and they were great. And again, how do we do that? You spend hours on the phone with the dart players trying to set it up right. Basically we did that. We did that for weeks and weeks, and then people said, "Oh, that's how you do it." And if I saw it being done, I still do it today. If I see it being done badly, I make a phone call. I say, "I can help you. Just try to do this or do that. It'll be better."
And David, I mean, in certain regards, that experience really changed in positive ways our sort of production process, right? In that I don't know if it'll make sense to people, but we weren't out of that process of hammering out that online league,
Right.
we came out of that with better habits is I think where I'm going with that. Like we meet on a regular basis. We have standard meetings, and we're working a lot, not a lot harder, like we didn't work harder, but you know what I mean? Like there were some things that we sort of went through that process that made us better going through that experience. So like you said, we were really early to market with that.
Yeah. Putting on shows, graphics looking good, intros. Here you go. Make everybody look good. Make everybody, it's show business because you're trying to entertain, and that's part of our mission is to entertain people in our company.
Absolutely. Hold on to that thought, because I want to just touch on the future in a moment about where we want to go, or pie in the sky type of stuff. But before we leave the past, we definitely should make note of the players that, as you talked about, Pete, we're trying to, sketch this thing out, and will this work? And you guys are nuts. But we did have people that believed in us. And I don't want to, let's not go names, because it's sands of leaving someone out. We don't want to, do that. So just as a player base, who you are, that we needed some key people. And they stepped up and put their names behind us. And there was a lot of value to that, right, Pete?
Of course. Trying to get the stakeholders to get behind you, right? It's essentially a microcosm, a small version of what you call influencer marketing today, right? And having the names that we had come on board, I mean, and they would candidly say, we think you're insane, but sure, we'll play. That certainly lent legitimacy that we needed. If we didn't have that, we don't get to where we are today. And it's not just the players. I mean, the sponsors that came in at the beginning or early on that were willing to take a risk and a chance on this group of 3 and then 4 schlebs who are trying to. I'm kidding. Obviously, we're not schlebs, but trying to put this thing on. They bought into the vision, and. And some of them are still with us. One is still with us today, and it's just amazing to continue that relationship for 10 plus years. It's that exactly. Also makes me happy, because you're not going to stick with somebody if they're not giving you anything, right? If they're not getting anything out of it, not just throwing money at you just to throw money at you. So
it'll be finite. It'll be that will wear itself out. And like you touched on, there were a lot of people that we needed to buy into the vision, players and potential sponsors and international relationships that all needed to see us earn it, go out and earn it. And it's been wonderful. So another thing I wanted to just quickly touch on as we grew, Pete, I'll leave it to you just for a sec. We brought in another partner, and, we definitely need to acknowledge that transaction and where we are today. We the 3 of us founded the company, but that's not the whole company where we stand today.
Right, absolutely. Bringing in Jeff Good as our fourth partner in the end of the first, beginning of the second year, and there he is in the picture there. My God, I have hair. David's Anthony, you're a baby. I love this picture. This is you know,
I just
these
found
are the
that
good old
today.
days. These are the
I
good
just
old
sent it. I
days.
found that today. I sent it over to Jeff just about 2 hours ago. So I'm glad we were able to put it up. Love it.
But Jeff's been just fantastic, right? He schleps, he gets the equipment to where it needs to be. He's there for setup. He's there for teardown. He makes our job, my job especially, is I think I'm on site pretty much for every event, right? But he makes my job easy because I can get in and start focusing on getting the tournament stuff set up, the control desk, and start thinking about how the bracket comes together and what it's going to look like and the announcements and all that stuff, and do the business side of it, and he makes sure that the room is playable and ready to go.
Yeah. Another component is everybody bringing something to the table, and we were a better company when Jeff came aboard as a principal, so we wanted to acknowledge and thank
100%.
Jeff. And we'll have Jeff on for chat someday.
Yeah, and we'll have some footage to play back on that. I do a lot of the time lapse coming into the building and leaving the building, time lapses and videos, and we'll be able to share that with people. We'll package it nicely together so we can talk about it and we can actually see what it takes. Well, any big tournament, it's going to be like that, but we certainly had our challenges. So,
and the other thing, you've got to mention, and just give me like 30 seconds here because it kind of talks about, the accomplishment and things that we didn't think we'd be doing. Without Jeff, we don't have CDLC. And CDLC, for those of you who don't know, many people at home might not, is the Championship Darts Latin America and the Caribbean. That came out of, it was a throwaway conversation I had with Matt Porter one day. We were having a meeting, and he's like, what do you know about Central America? What do you know about Latin America? What do you know about, actually started with, what do you know about Brazil is kind of where it came from, because we had Diogo Portela, and he was kind of the rep that used to come over. They did the qualifier in Brazil every year. He's like, any desire to do anything in Central and South America, perhaps? And, I'm like, sure. It's something that we think about. Well, Jeff lives in Costa Rica. So now, he's kind of taken the reins to really help spur that. Without Jeff, we don't have that. Or if we do, it's not progressing nearly as quickly as it is with him. So, I'm going to see him this weekend. We're going to do a site. So we're going to see a site survey. So, I fly out on. We both fly out on Saturday morning, and be back on Monday. But it's fantastic stuff. It's just having that ability, and that's another level of trust. And I'm rambling a little bit, and I promise I'm going to land the plane here in a sec. But we started. We tried to get the PDC affiliation. We kind of got shooed away a little bit, like, yeah, you okay, whatever, yeah, you okay, yeah, we'll see. We've heard this before. Come back, child, come back. And Matt, if you're watching this, that's not exactly what was said, obviously, but I'm making a phone call in the morning. But then eventually it's like, well, hey, maybe these guys are a thing. Maybe they're worthy of partnering with. They don't just partner with anybody, right? And so we finally got that deal over the hump, and then we ended up kind of expanding that. And now for the PDC to even say, what do you think about doing that? It's essentially this entire hemisphere is in professional darts is this team, and I say this team, it's not just this team. You mentioned Jeff and Nils. There's so many people behind the scenes. If I start naming all the staff, I'm going to leave people out and I'm going to tick people off. But suffice it to say that the people that put their blood and sweat and tears and everything in behind the scenes to help us, we couldn't do it without them either. They're absolutely amazing, and I would run through a wall for those people. It's just amazing. It's another thing where you stop and look back 10 years and go, how the heck are we running events in Costa Rica, in Chile, and now Jamaica, right? Where did that come from?
Two continents. We, like you touched on, kids and summer and tours and all kinds of stuff. It's been pretty crazy. So in 30 seconds from each of you, starting with David, like where's the next 10 years? Where's the pie in the sky for you?
I was just looking at a note that was coming down here. This is not the Continental Cup 2030, by the way. So, was that to me? No.
Yeah, to you.
It kind of
Like,
dovetails into the
quickly,
question you were
off
just
the
asked,
cuff.
I think.
Really? No, what's the question again? I'm sorry, I didn't hear it.
Like, from your gut, like pie in the sky, where, where's the optimal place? Where are we in another 10 years?
Well, we'll be doing what you're seeing on television with the PDC. Our company will be handling, those big shows. I mean, what more can we ask for? I mean, we'll be bigger. We'll have more players. We'll have kids that right now that are kids that'll be our champions, and they'll be making a lot of money, and because we got to get our prize money up so our shows can be better, bigger and better. We want to put on shows. That's all. We want to be like the big boys. If this was golf, we'd be saying the same thing about golf or whatever. So we want to entertain people. We want to put on shows. We want to have millions of dart fans out there, or who are benefiting from what we've been doing. I always look at it as we're like, I don't want to be hundreds of years ago when basketball was being done with an actual basket and whatever. It started with nothing. Baseball started with nothing, and we're doing something that's, if it wasn't going to be us, it'd be somebody. But when were they going to come? I'm talking about to build the sport, to make it right. So, but now with television the way it is, and where everything, television the way we know it, by the way, it's kind of like gone. It'll be gone by the time this is a vintage tape that we're listening to right now. It's going to be all on whatever device that we might have in our head or whatever. Not to get creepy about all that stuff, but it's television's different. So we've got something that can fit the future of broadcasting.
And starting off this year with the cross border, and we're gonna go into that in a second. So, Pete, give me your gut on, you have your druthers, or beyond your wildest dreams, if you will. Where we are. What's 10 years?
Well, everybody's got kind of a vision, right? If you ask me where I want us to be in 10 years, I actually have a number, right? And the number is, I want us to be at payouts that are approaching $1 million US a year. That's obviously we'd like to shoot for more, but that's the goal. Are we going to get there? I sure as hell hope so. The gambling initiative that you mentioned could pay some serious dividends. It's a metric crap ton of work, and we'll talk about that. Maybe I don't know, but yeah, I think we can get to that $1 million payout. And also, candidly, 10 years from now, I want to look at not doing this anymore. And not because I don't love it, but at some point, I mean, that'll be 35 years in promoting darts. It's 25 now. And as much as I love this game and I want to be affiliated with it in some way, I'm not sure I want to be flying around the globe, 30 weekends a year to do it, and that's just being candid.
Well, you'll be the CEO in our small office someplace, and somebody will
with residual checks coming in. But I mean, that's exactly. I mean, those are the sort of things I think of. That exactly full salaried or on the verge of being done with this run with a substantial company, chugging away 6 tournaments that are major spectator events, maybe one massive venue a la a theater at MSG with, like Pete said, a substantial 25 event tour that people are actually, putting money in their pockets, putting money in retirement, and actually making a living. So if you want, Pete, we're going a little long on this segment. We want to also touch on some PDC stuff coming up. Do you want to give the people an idea of what the gaming situation is? And you could tie that into some information about the cross-border as well.
Sure. Just in terms of gaming, you've seen us make some announcements, but I don't think we've really clarified exactly what those announcements mean kind of cohesively. So let me just kind of do a 10,000-foot view on it, right? So you've seen a lot of chatter on social media over the years of, what they really need is, gambling, right? And like, it just wave the magic wand and here's the gaming, and it just comes to, because somebody wants it, it just comes to fruition. And unfortunately, that just isn't the case. So we've established some relationships over the past year to 14 months. One of them is our integrity partner, which is U.S. Integrity. They are going to be responsible for monitoring fairness, make sure there's no weird activity with wagering. They interface with all the major books, right? So any sports book in the U.S. that you might know, U.S. Integrity is kind of working with them to watch the action and kind of see, is there stuff that's happening ahead of where you might, and then some big event happens, right? And people are profiting on something, big line movements because somebody has some insider information, match fixing potential, like all this stuff. It's not just found out because, it's of luck. They've got these just amazing systems. I've got this dashboard. I mean, I look at it fairly frequently. I've got this dashboard that shows me, in darts, what lines are, what the movement looks like.
How exciting is that? Really, I mean, just to be able to geek out and have wagering on all these different components. I mean, this is just going to be awesome.
And if there's any issues with us, God, we hope there won't be, right? But if there is even a question, that's going to pop into the dashboard. It's going to be like, here's what we found, here's what we suspect, here's what you need to do. Talk to the DRA, talk to the player, whatever it is, right? Yeah. So that's the guardrail. That's U.S. Integrity, and then we have our data partner, which is Alt Sports Data, and Alt Sports Data, their job is essentially to get the data that's needed to establish the markets. That's what they're called, markets, over to the operators. Operators, you would know them as sports books. And so right now, we're in a kind of a starting project. We're kicking off a project to try to interface our systems with theirs to make sure that there's data that's going in real time. And this is something, it's not going to be an overnight thing. It's already moving slower than I had hoped. It's taking time and effort and a ton of money, and it's causing me a lot of agita. But moving that data project forward, I mean, I had more hair when we started this thing than I do now, but moving that forward eventually will help us not only have just wagering on the game, but in-match wagering. And we're not going to start there. Yeah. The goal, we got to start somewhere. So it's likely you're going to see us start with markets that are very basic, right? Match winner, event winner, potentially, number of 180s, things like that. So it'll start small. And if there's an appetite for it, which we hope there is, then we'll start seeing the addition of other markets, because, creating that real-time interface, that handshake, the data, the level of data and the timeliness of it and the integrity of it, you get questions like, well, what happens? Because anytime you have computers talking to each other, they're not 100% uptime, right? You might have 99.6% uptime, but then the question is, what happens when you're in the 0.4% downtime and somebody's throwing for the Continental Cup Championship? What the heck happens then? And so, those are the problems that have to be solved, and we're working on that, and it's real exciting. But it's also like, oh my God, I didn't think about this, I didn't think about that. So it's not just like, oh yeah, what you should do is you should have wagering. There's all this stuff that has to go on behind the scenes. And working with those guys is just amazing. Todd Ballard over at Alt Sports, and Ali and AJ Kaplan over at US Integrity. Those guys are just, they're fantastic. They'll take my phone calls. I'll be freaking out. Need to yell at somebody for something, and they'll take those calls and really try to talk me off the ledge. So the gambling thing is coming along. I said I wanted us to be there for the Cross Border Darts Challenge. I firmly believe we'll still get there. But right now we're approved in 6 states. I'll even just list them. Just if you're in any of these states, look for the wagering to come near you, right? So we are legally approved to do business, legally approved to be wagered on in Arizona, Colorado, Louisiana, New Jersey, Tennessee, and Wyoming. And I'm having, with another state that I'm not going to name now, but I've had some back and forth with the regulator there. They actually approached us saying, hey, we've got some interest in wagering on darts. What are you all about? So I just got done with a bunch of conversations and emails and calls with that, and trying to get them on board. And there's going to be more of that. There's 38 states that you can wager on in the United States. You have sports betting, and our goal is to be in all 38. And so we're progressing there. I'm happy with where we are with that. That was kind of like what you were looking at for the gambling thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, because we want to convey to people that the process is underway, but even we didn't understand how involved this was going to be. As you said, off the cuff, hey, you know what, you need betting, so it's much more involved than that. And as you talked about, it's very important to spin the project around and look at it from every angle, because there are going to be people in this world that are going to look to exploit weaknesses, like you said, that 0.04 of something. If there's a weakness somewhere, it needs to be shored up, and that's what these processes, it takes a while.
Yeah.
But when you get there, you're better off for it, right? Because the hard work has been put in.
At the end of the day, it's about identifying risk, acknowledging risk, and managing risk. There's no way to eliminate all risk. If you eliminate all risk, you go out of business. You never have the wagering in the first place. There's going to be risk. To say there's no risk in it, anybody who says that is lying to you. There's always going to be risk. But you need to understand what the risks are going in and know what your game plan is if something happens. And without these partners, there's no way we get there. And so that I'm stoked about that. So you want to talk about cross-border for just a couple of minutes?
Yeah, I was going to say, do you want to give the peoples a little info and David talk about the show aspect, or you want me to do it? You got it?
Yeah, I can chat if that's. I've got it up here. So
yeah, no, well, we've got a ticker underneath for everybody to keep to. We've got the players, so you can check that out. Pete's going to give you the particulars of when and where, and David's going to sell you on the great atmosphere. Come on, and be the show we talk about it, right, David?
Let's talk about it before the seats are sold. Did you hear that?
What?
Let's talk about it before we sell all the seats. The seats are going.
Yeah,
the seats are selling.
Well,
so.
we want to prep everybody. You are coming with the excitement. So where are we going, Pete?
So we are taking the second annual Cross-Border Darts Challenge to a new venue. We're in the Midwest. We're at Uptown Social in Michigan City, Indiana. Really, really cool venue. Now, and by the way, last year the White Eagle Hall was an amazing venue too. If you were there, and you heard me say it multiple times, if you were there in that room, it was special, right? And Uptown Social is just as special, and it's a similar venue in many ways. It's an original church. It was turned into a theater, then it kind of sat vacant, and then this group of investors bought the place, and they spent a lot of money to rehab it. It's a wedding venue, it's a concert venue. They got state-of-the-art sound. There's a balcony. It's just a really cool place to be, and so I'm stoked about being there. You guys, the players have been down at the crawl. If you're watching this, you can see the player names. I'm not going to list those, but tickets are available at ticketsource.us, ticketsource.us/champdarts, CHAMPDARTS, ticketsource.us/champdarts. We've got tickets for Friday night. We got tickets for Saturday night. We've got a limited number of 2-day passes that are still available. We'll have a meet and greet on the Friday afternoon. It's great. The city's really excited about having us there too. I've been meeting with their development director, their special events director. And the other cool thing is, there's this movie that's being shot called Bulls. If you're a fan of darts, you've been on social media, you've seen Bulls, you've seen Dan Meyer, kind of BI's the director. He's on there talking about that fairly regularly. He's promoting it. They're shooting in the same venue we're going to be in. We get done, we wrap, they come in, they shoot for the next week. So it's going to be seen in a feature film too. Come to the
cross-border stowaway, and you'll be an extra in the Bulls movie.
Right. Well, and they'll be filming some, and full disclosure, they'll be filming some B-roll while we are running our event. That's part of the reason they want to be there, and they had us go first. So I think if you haven't gotten your tickets yet, do. I think that you'll love it, but I think you'll be real happy with that venue. It's sexy, and the great thing is we got some good hotel rates too. So there's. If you're in Chicago, if you're in Detroit, if you're in Grand Rapids, Kalamazoo, Indianapolis, these are all within 2 to 3 hour drives of Michigan City. It kind of is very centrally located. And the great thing is you're not going to have to deal with Chicago traffic if you're coming from out of Chicago. If you're coming from Chicago, you're going to have to. But yeah, I think it's going to be wonderful, and I can't wait to see y'all there. And the dates, of course, are April 12th, the Friday, and April 13th, the Saturday. Friday night, we start at 7 p.m. Saturday night, we start at 6 p.m. And again, tickets once again, that's ticketsource.us/Champ Darts.
So come be a part of the show, and that's what we're building towards, and we're excited that we've got the second year of the cross border, and of course at the end of the year we put on the Continental Cup, and so we sort of, obviously we're trying to follow a path, carve our own pathway here in North America, but also look overseas for inspiration, certainly. So let's reflect on the major tournament that takes place at the end of the year in London, the PDC World Darts Championship, right? You of course have to start at the place of the Luke Littler effect, right? Let's talk a little bit about, part of what we're going to do on this show is take world darts events and other dart events and sort of see how it reflects through us here in North America, what it does to the sport that A, we love, and B, we're trying to grow here. So I was privileged to be over there for a week over there. Peter's been there. And it was amazing to see what sort of, buzz that Luke Littler created, but it comes year after year now. It's been, Fallon's experiences over there. We saw Billie Jean King tweet out about Fallon, and then that led to Michael versus Michael and the Perfect Leg, and they're on Ariel Hawani's podcast, and and now you go to Littler, and goodness gracious, he was on just about every newspaper and outlet that you could see. So from your perspective, we all travel in different parts of the country, but everybody knows us, knows what we have a passion for. So what did you guys see about what the Littler effect, if you will, do to the conversation about the sport in the world?
Well, it's what was needed. It's what's always needed. We people, when you talk about people saying you need to do this, you need to do that. Well, these effects that we've been having with the Luke the Nuke and people, it hits all of the news outlets around the world. That's what we need. We need more of. And to me, that's the perfect thing that needs to happen. So we need more of those types of events, and we need to have somebody come out of the United States, or at least between the United States and Canada, one of those fabulous situations where it just hits everybody like a rock in the head. Boom! Wow! Because that effect just ripples across the whole world. So that's my take on that. Of course, we love it when we see something like that.
Of course. And any time that we can get what we love and what we have a real passion for to be seen in a great lens, it helps us. It helps us to have Peter be armed with that sort of taste in someone's mouth, a recollection of those great images when he talks to a company about sponsorship, or we talk to a broadcaster, or we talk to a venue about what kind of events, So Peter, what sort of things did you see through that whole tournament with Littler and the amazing response that he got?
Well, the kid obviously was special going in, right? We've known him. We partnered with the JDC, and the JDC has been talking about Luke Littler for forever, right? We kind of had Keen Barry, and then oh my God, here's this Luke Littler guy, and I met him the year prior in 2022 going into 23. You know, he's walking around with the big JDC trophy and walking around with it again, you know, this year too, right? He's got the big trophy down there. And then it just, he has this poise. He's got this panache that you know, somebody of his age you just don't see. Yeah, and you see social media, people talk about it. That's one of the problems with social media, can get toxic. People talk about it as, you know, comes across as you know, he's arrogant. He's, you know, he's confident. I wouldn't put him as arrogant in the slightest.
Yes.
Kid's great. And to excel at that level, you need to have you need to have a sense of confidence, right? People who are not confident don't win world championships. It doesn't happen. You don't see anybody getting up there in a world championship final going, well, you know, I don't know if this is going. No, it's going in, right? That's the. And so he has that. There is no doubt about that. Friendly. I mean, I haven't talked to him a heck of a lot, but friendly kid, right? In a sense, you feel like you're talking to somebody who's, you know, an adult, and he's got the pro in him. It's going to be real interesting.
I think he's essentially what everybody's wanted to build, right? He's the lab experiment, and I don't mean that disrespectful. He's a human being, yes, but in terms of, you see him, you know, he's 3 throwing at a board and emulating Van Barneveld or someone else. So it's that component of the, you know, he knows how to give it to the camera. You talked about him coming through the JDC system. He credits them a lot. You know, they put a microphone and a camera in his face constantly. Interviews. So, you know, I got to be in the room there. I was much more intrigued by the press room during the Worlds. As you go in and there's people standing on chairs just so they can see over the first 2 rows of media to see him. And he sat there like a king holding court because of it. And just, like you talked about, his poise on stage, playing to the crowd. I mean, that blew everybody away. He turns to the crowd and asks their opinion. Do I do this? What do I do? You know, and of course the chops. All of that is,
he backs it up. Exactly. He backs it up.
Yeah. It's all a joke if the darts don't go in the
Correct.
tremendous way that they do. But just in this incredible all around way, he's, you know, 20 years ago, if everybody got into a room and said, what do we want? It would have been this kid.
Yeah, I mean,
what comes to my mind is the kid's is the clip when he's 18 months old, throwing darts at the board, and even then he's turning around and going, "What do you think?" You see, I mean, that's what he plays in my head.
That's what he saw. But I mean, that's part of been the PDC process, right? There's been a lot of. I know, Peter. I'll get it back to you in a second. I'm getting in one of them zones. I'm going to go off on a tangent. Yeah. But like, it's, you know, there was a lot of talk about the PDC and the change in the crowd, and that happened at the Premier League, right? In that, you know, things were a little bit more subdued, and then the Premier League pretty much busted everything open to the point where, to a degree, things have gone too far in some people's opinions, with excessive whistling, focusing on one player, moments in the match, that sort of stuff. That's the stuff we never condone. You know, we want a crazy atmosphere, but it's like, you know, the players, just like, you know, David was talking about earlier, that's what we are struggling with and are trying to develop the idea of, you know, you run a tournament on the floor, and we ask for some proper decorum, and then when we put a camera in your face, we want you to act like a wild maniac. And it's a skill to learn sort of how to juggle that, right? But can you imagine a player his age, Pete, that has, now that we all get to see so much more PDC coverage, streaming, and all of that they get to see that Gerwin Price thing is standard. That's how they want me to act, right?
Yeah, we haven't had somebody this young make this much of a splash since, really, I mean, Michael Van Gerwen, right? I put Michael in his pro-am at the Windy City Open. He was 16 years old, right? And you knew at that point he had something special. But even it wasn't what Luke has at that point. He had growing up to do, development to do, and obviously, you know, talk about confident. You know, Michael just exudes that. But Luke and the effect. You know, you mentioned that everybody around here is talking about him, right? He's on every podcast. He's on every news channel. It's like he caught fire. It went around the world. I was talking to Steve Brown last week, and they are busier than they've ever been because it's really lit the fire for more juniors in Europe. The challenge we have here, unfortunately, is that, number one, we got the attention span of a gnat. The average American just doesn't have an attention span, right? Squirrel, and we're on to the next thing. And in a sport world, there's so much more, right? In Europe, they have football, soccer. They've got darts. They've got cricket. They don't have 48,000 sports competing for attention, at the national and in North America, I guess you could say continental level.
You're right,
and so,
Pete. Let's get rid of hockey, basketball, minor league.
Watch it. Don't you dare take my hockey away. But you hit on it though, right? There's all these seasons overlapping, and then you get into football, and it's football playoffs, and now you got the Super Bowl, and now we're going into late in the hockey season. Where does darts fit in here in the United States? And that's candidly some of the challenge about trying to capture that genie in the bottle, and just harness the energy and keep on the forefront. If I had $3 million marketing budget or $5 million marketing budget, yeah, we could be on the forefront, but right now it's trying now to have these events like we're doing, and then trying to find the media coverage that you can get, and trying to harness the Littler effect by mentioning him when you're talking on these interviews and things like that, and press releases and such. But how about the kid in the freaking Premier League? Like, he gets up and arguably the most lonely thing, the most lonely thing as a player in sport, in our sport, is the Premier League. It is grueling. It beats the daylights out of you. You're, week in, week out. It's travel. You don't know where you are at any given time. And he's like, I got this. Like, kid throws a 9-darter. Like, it's, wow.
Absolutely incredible.
17 years old. He's 17 years old. We need more 17-year-olds thinking that they can do that. It's as simple as that.
But now it's interesting because he's now coming back down to earth a little bit, right? James Wade. James Wade has the ability to knock anybody out of an event, but he does a James Wade against Luke Littler the other day and bounces him in the first round. Like, it's now going to be interesting to see how. What?
Can't win them all, Pete.
Can't win them all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, but it's going to be interesting to see how that, how the response to that is, right? Because what's going to happen. He's in a purple patch now, and eventually every player comes down a little bit. He'll go through a series of events where he's going to be, not as successfully as he has been, and
Absolutely.
then the social media, they're going to start yapping.
Yeah.
This kid isn't what, and it'll be interesting to see. I'm confident that he'll pull through whatever, right? He basically got a
sure, they're going to look.
But it'd
like
be interesting to see
they're going to
what
look for that spot to attack.
Yes.
Like, this
Yes.
is he's not as good as we thought. But to your point, that's there's the learning process that will make him a little bit of humility, a little bit of you've got to also lose to be
Yes.
a champion, to take lessons out of that and be better for it. And I think we all highly suspect that he will.
Some days you get the double two. Some days the double two gets you.
Amen to that, right, Irete?
I know that.
So let's, before we move on, well, I've got a little pathway for us to sort of bring us home for the episode. But just like everybody else did, the other Luke sort of gets second in the conversation. But goodness gracious, the young man won a world championship. Speaking of Luke Humphreys, you know what I mean? Finishes up the year like 4 out of 5 major tournaments and lifts the Sid Waddell Trophy. So we would be. We're not giving you a nuts and bolts, recap. We can go find that out, but it would be remiss for us to not mention that Luke Littler didn't win the final.
Right.
But for that double two.
It was his age.
And another testament to you touched on earlier about the system, about these systems working, these, that we're trying trying to build here as well. But I mean, Luke Humphries is an example of that. Former PDC youth world champion. He put the time in and the work, and it paid off. He's a world champion. So
nobody had a better year than Luke Humphries in 2023.
Right? Exactly. That's what I'm saying. And it's sort of this weird thing. I've fan of a few other shows, and it's like, is it a case of him being shortchanged a little bit by all the attention being a little, or in a case of a lot of times people win a world championship, they just, spoke to Michael Smith, and, he admitted, first couple months of winning a world championship, it's you're going to enjoy it, and or the press is so much, it takes a lot out of you. There's not a cost there's a cost to everything, right? That a world championship is life-changing, but it has some life-changing drawbacks as well. So does Humphries get to sort of hide a little bit behind that whole Littler thing, right?
Yes. I think Humphries has Smith didn't get what Humphries had. Smith got the, Michael may miss, Michael may hit, I can't spake, oh my God, and it's the best leg of darts ever thrown, and he's all over the world, and it's, and then he gets beat up the media, and it's all about, it's a Michael Smith show for a month and a half or more, and then it's everybody, well, is he going to perform? He's not performing. With Humphries, number one, he handled the Littler of thing like a champ. I mean, if you listen to him, he knows that people are watching Littler, but in his words, I'm world champion, and he is. But now people are still watching Littler, and so you're exactly right, Anthony, in what you say. He's now probably the beneficiary of the fact that there's less of the rabid pack of dogs, media-wise, chasing him around, and kind of letting him do his thing.
I'm thinking that they're splitting the target. You're coming off the world championships like that, and things like there isn't one target at that point. There was a couple of guys they're going after, and everybody was looking. So that's how I looked at it. They weren't. They're sharing the target on the back. Yeah.
So let's of course we want to touch on a little bit. We're talking the PDC World Championship, so we're very proud that through our system players get the opportunity to compete in that event. So let's. And then there's other players out of North America that have become tour card holders. So let's talk for a few minutes about the players that played in the World Championship, CDC or North American players. Then kind of lead us into what happened in Q School, and then bring us tied all together with us, leading into the U.S. Masters in New York, and us helping to put some people on that stage. So firstly, I want to start with actually someone who didn't play in the World Championship, but who sort of ended his current run as a card holder and acknowledge what he's done for North America in Jeff Smith. So I want to, get, and as we put these names out, just, give, yes, Peter, that's what I wanted to do. Thank you. Yes. To sort of make sure we acknowledge what Jeff did. We all watched, the amount of time and effort he put into his travel, really being a trailblazer in certain regards. Of course, you've got others, most notably John Pryor, but, Jeff certainly played his role and put his effort into the kind of overall effort of where we want to go as a continent. Correct? Concur?
Go for it.
That's a yes.
No, I'm thinking.
Yeah.
No.
Again, we don't.
Well,
we just much in depth, but
I'm only going to go into the fact that we need more dedicated people. That the dedicated, athletes are going to come in and dedicate and get sponsored and learn how to get sponsored and learn how to build their lives, because you just can't do it overnight. I mean, he committed for a couple 3 years there, and we need to continue to tell our new players that are coming up through our championship dart circuit that's where they have to put their head. It practice just as much of being a businessman as it is being a great dart player. I mean,
Jeff's a great dart player, and he's a great guy. That's you can't help but just cheer for Jeff Smith, right? He's just the quintessential Canadian. He's nice.
Sure.
He's great, amazing talent. You mentioned the adversity. The guy, we saw, if you follow on social media, Jules Van Dongen seems to have caught the Jeff Smith travel bug. But he went through the pandemic travel. It's the amount of effort that man put in to get 2 events and playing events, and he fell off the tour this year, but there's opportunities going forward, and which could be great for us to have him back on CDC.
I think so. I believe so.
And you touched on a good segue for us, Pete. You touched on the next player that I want to discuss, Jules Van Dongen. We saw him compete, and he went down to Darren Penhall 3-1 in the first round. But let's talk about Jules's story a little bit. We'll touch on it more in depth, but with his Q school experience. But we saw a player who needed the time to experience and grow and mature on the PDC tour, right? And we finally saw what we all know Jules can give out, but it just was such a small smidge, just short, right? In that those 6 months that he had, got himself in the World Championship, but coming out of the World, didn't retain his tour card. But what an amazing 6 months that everybody got to see of Jules.
Lightning in a bottle. It all clicked. He wins. I'm not going to say we're taking credit for it, but he wins CDC and then goes on this just tear. And what was somebody who was, quote unquote, an easy draw. There's nobody in that room that's an easy draw, but you understand what I'm saying, right? Early in his career as a PDC professional, all of a sudden, everybody wants to stay away from him. You don't want him your quadrant of the bracket. The World Championship match, unfortunate, could have gone differently. But look, he bounced right back, right? Bounced right back on tour, won his card, and now he's got another 2 years.
And David, I know, you've enjoyed the Jules experience and journey that he's a guy that we see when as Pete said, gets a trophy in his hand, he gets it. He gets the media aspect of it.
He delivers while he's playing, after he's playing, and if he loses, he still turns around and thanks. He's a great character. He's got a great look. He's got a great game, and he's dedicated at this point. We need a couple more of him. It'd be great. So.
And so we let's move on. Exactly. We and that's what we want, right? We want a stable. We want a stable of players like that. And then it's another sort of good plateau that we've gotten to. It's where it's not now, or it was at a certain point 3, 4, maybe 5 players who could put up a certain average player internationally. We're starting to get into the double digits. We're starting to build a stable of players that not only are we blessed to put on our stages, but then go play internationally, and makes everybody look good, makes the whole venture look good. And it's a real point of pride.
It's great hearing, the broadcasters and podcasters and people in the media, in England and Europe talk about our guys. Then they make you just sit up in your chair when they start talking about.
It really does.
It's just. That's what we're doing. That's a little bit of payoff for us. So
our CDC number 1 goes over, Alex Spellman. He lost to Ryan Joyce first round as well, 3-1. And I'm going to tie all of these scores and averages and stuff by the time we get to it. But I know, Pete, you saw Alex play? Did you not?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Alex. What do you think of Alex? Is sort of, we know Alex is a very steadfast and cerebral kind of guy. To me, I would imagine he's going to leave the alley pally with like a bucket load of stuff that's going to stick with him, and he's going to go home and work on that.
Exactly. I've never seen Alex have an experience that he hasn't learned from, and I can only imagine, what that you get a chance to up on that stage. There's nothing in this planet is going to prepare you as a dart player for getting called up on stage and walk up and playing on stage at the Alexandra Palace. There's nothing on this planet that can prepare you for that. And so, he responded. He's a guy who's unflappable. That's another match that a couple of darts here and there, and it could have been a different story. He's got a ceiling that is high, and the consistency. I mean, he's a guy that started on the tour in 2015, right? Remember, Ant? And kind of played the first couple of years.
I remember when he reached out and when he came aboard, and
then kind of left and worked on his game. Wasn't ready to play, and now he's back and better than ever before. But yeah, he's going to be back on that stage. There's no doubt about it. He's got what it takes to be back on that stage, and you'll see him play a different. Maybe I can't say play a different game, but yeah, I think you'll see him have a different result. But again, he's not going to be outwardly give his opponent anything to seize on, right? Mm-hmm. Alex is the same guy if he's beating you, 2-0 or if he's down 2-0. He's not going to give you anything to seize on and be like, I'm going to bury this guy, or I'm going to use it as a rallying point. He just gets up there and does the work.
David, anything on Alex?
He's a pro. No, he's a pro. And he has another plan too. He loves to teach. He loves to share this passion. That's what I like about him. He's got he's out there. He's on both sides.
Pretty. I like that, but that was spot on. That was the tack right on the board. He's a pro. I think that sums it up all the way. And Pete, it made me chuckle. You were like, nothing can really prepare you for hitting that alley pally stage. I'll be quite honest with you. Nothing prepares you to walk in as a spectator into that room either. I mean, the whole place is just this amazing sort of circus of this sport that we love. It's just it's
crazy. Like a rock concert. It really is like a rock concert. Really is. You know what I mean? And if somebody was to pull you up and dance with you, yeah.
It's just crazy. So, and that's going to be content, I think, for another show. We'll talk about that sort of stuff. Now, let's move on to the Canadian number one. Alex came through the rankings as the overall one, but the U.S. one, representative CDC. Let's talk about Canada's number one, David Cameron. We saw him return to Ali Pali. He had a long run at Lakeside, so somebody that definitely familiar with that setting, and he's performed well. Less than optimal by his standards. Again, 3-1 first round Jamie Hughes, but Cameron is always a solid performer.
No doubt.
I like the way he looks on camera, and I like the way he performs on camera. He's not totally hidden because you can see the emotion in his face and things, and he gets frustrated, but he seems to take it out on trying to throw better. So I always liked watching him play. So it's my
he's had a lot of international success recently. He won the first World Seniors Darts Masters, right? So playing well on the international stage. He'd be the first one to tell you, and I talked to him afterwards, that that he was not happy with that match.
Without a doubt, exactly, yeah. And from what I hear, Pete, a great guy to go out and get a kebab with.
You just got to watch it because he'll eat your kebab. That's the problem, especially if it's lamb.
So that's the word on Cameron. You can't, no getting distracted. The
watch
kebab
your
goes
food.
Missing, and he just gives you a look like, I don't know.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Kylie Edmonds is laughing his butt off when that happens. We sent him a text and he's love it. Anyway.
So the next guy up to discuss, somebody that really just sort of like an absolute firecracker, over late summer, sweeps a CDC event, then goes on, wins our Continental Cup, by the Continental Cup, gets a look at the Grand Slam, goes bananas in the Grand Slam, which is quarterfinals, right, Pete? And then he finds himself there, opening the show in the World Championship. I mean, what a unique spot to be, the curtain raiser for the PDC Championship. And of course, I'm talking about the one and only Stowe Bunce.
The Grand Slam the Grand Slam, man. So, don't gloss over that, because he wins the group with Peter Wright, Stephen Bunting, and Dave Chisnell. Like, Stowe Bunce, you come out of that. Like, he's the guy that you look at. He's like, he's gonna go, wave at the stage, get his couple of matches, and that's nice. See you later. Here's your check, and kind of wander out the door. And he wins the group, and then he ends up, beating. Andrew Gilding, and he's in the quarterfinal. You're talking earlier about the media and listen to what they say about the player, right? The cool part about what we get to do is, I can hear what they say about the play because we talk about it when they're not on the air, and just hearing the stuff that's said behind the scenes, that's the cool part, because it's not like I'm just saying something to be nice on when I'm on. It's, hey, this guy's really got it. Those conversations were plentiful over in Wolverhampton.
and
flamboyant sincerity. Yeah, flamboyant
absolutely.
sincerity.
Yes.
Yeah, sincere guy, and
David,
that's
you gotta love
internal.
him.
But I mean, we love the external. It's like, we love it. The Neon Nightmare. I mean, and how perfect did that sort of play out? But I mean, it's another sort of piece of what we've been looking for. We want this persona, right?
I'm glad he came back to darts.
And he gives you exactly what you want. I mean, the showman right there in the middle here, David Irete. I mean, I can see you salivating over what Stowe Bunce can do camera-wise, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I'll take a couple of those too. But, who else you got there, Anthony?
Lastly, we land on somebody I really want to give some time to that. We know privately he's not exactly a subdued kind of guy. He really can a lot of times lay something on you in person that you're just like, holy cow, that came out of his mouth. But overall, his persona is pretty steadfast and quiet. And I'm talking about the Ginger Ninja in Matt Campbell. I really want to, I've sort of tried to convey if I'm on another podcast and talking about that, I'm really convinced that, Matt, when it's all said and done, is going to really put together a career, not just a run, but a career. Like, he's going to get himself in those spots in the PDC that lend themselves to more and more, that then he gets on that wheel of, I'm in the top 16, top 32, top 16, 24, wherever, and things start moving. TV invites lead to prize money, lead to more TV invites, and I'm just convinced of that. And I can't convey how much respect I have for what Matt Campbell has put together. So I'll set the table, and then you guys give me your take on things. I mean, first and foremost, what really stuck out at me when we were, doing some stats, this was Matt Campbell's 5th straight PDC World Championship, and we know players have, Jeff has been to them, and John, of course, and stuff. So it's not unheard of. But in, when we talk about the competition, we've sent a lot of different guys, and good guys too, and Pulios and Longs and Cameron, and we've sent a lot of different guys. So to see Matt go now year after year after year after year for 5 straight years is just it's noteworthy, and I needed to say that. So now let's look at Matt's tournament. Now Matt, round 1, 3-2 over Lawrence Olagan. Round 2, the last 64, 3-2 over James Wade, and then he hits, man of the moment, Luke Littler 4-1. Matt played pretty well, but just, what were you going to do in that spot? So, not only is he, making another world championship, but performing there 3 rounds. I think it went back and forth between when the last time a Canadian was either 3 rounds in or last 64, all kinds of, everybody was getting confused, but it was either like 2012 or 2014 or something. So it's been a while. So big kudos on Matt for that. So give me your overall take on Matt. You
go, Peter.
Matt's always going to have a special spot in my heart because he's our guy. He walked into an event in Ontario as a qualifier, ends up making the final. And kind of he could be still just playing in Ontario. So I'm proud of that, right? Obviously his talent got him where he is, but just the fact that we kind of got him on the road is a point of pride. But the Ilagan match, that was the crowd and the way Ilagan plays to the crowd, and having that conversation with Matt afterwards, it's like kind of silencing the crowd. I know that was a big thing for him. It was like, yeah, all right, you can go ahead and try to wind up the crowd. I'm going to dump you out, and he did. He's another guy. He's just consistent player. I think. You get there and you start to play and you have high expectations for yourself, and then in that room of 128, you can have the highest of expectations and you can get humbled real quick. And his last couple of years have been up and down. He'd be the first to tell you. I mean, they've been up and down, but he's managed to get the work done. He's retained his card. He's, again, you mentioned the consecutive world championships. So you can never count Matt Campbell out of anything. And he's just a great guy to talk to. He's just funny, and that's I just enjoy him.
I like it because he seems to want to talk in the key of F. So
yes, I don't want to interview him necessarily. I don't know if any of you, I know my partners remember at home, we did this back in 21. We were doing the U.S. tour and the Canada tour. We're separate, and we were in Moncton, New Brunswick, and he ends up winning an event, and I go and interview him, and he drops a word he shouldn't have dropped, and we're live, and I'm like, and I as the interviewer, I'm like, I don't know what to do. Do I look at my watch? Do I cut the interview? Like, what do I do here?
Yeah. Well, he's one of those guys.
So every time I interview him, it's like, no, none of that.
Right. I wish you could move some of that energy from his mouth into his body, because remember I had to make him dance when he won his first CDC trophy, and we used that for a couple of years. Just the whole fact that how do I celebrate? Don't worry, we'll teach you. And anyway, he's a great guy. I've got some great behind-the-scenes stuff of him in New York last year, where he's getting ready to go out to the crowd. I have it on tape. Someday it'll be useful. So to see the difference, he's back to like a little kid going to open his Christmas presents. Then he comes out and gets in front of the crowd and does his thing. So there are levels of people's personalities, and some people show the rest of the public, and some people don't. So anyway, I think he's got a lot of potential for years to come.
So here, let me throw these numbers at you, and then it'll be finished with these players. So here, score lines: 3-2, 3-2, 4-1. Well, those are 3-2, 3-2 wins, and then 4-1, 3-0, 3-1, 3-1, 3-1. Then averages: 93, 96, 91, 92, 82, 95, 91. I mean, those are the places that we weren't at a while ago. No big zeros in those score lines. Those sets were contested, and those averages are where we wanted to see them go. So, to wrap all of that up, what we touched about earlier about growth and progression, like there's your growth and progression. So before we move on to something else, we have a question. Mr. Nils Nelson in the chat room has garnered us a question. So let's see. I think we're ready to put a question up on the screen there. Okay. Does the CDC have any plans to foster league participation? Now, does that mean going into the sort of, local leagues, if you will? So I certainly want to clarify that a little bit. Foster league participation. I mean, I'll give my quick, we obviously are always in favor of every aspect of the game. We've talked about that for a long time, right? It's in our best interest to see league darts be big and healthy, singles leagues, open tournaments around the country, right? I mean, that's always in our best interest to see that part of darts be vibrant and healthy, right? Because that's where ultimately we're going to get our talent, right? So that's my quick take on that. You boys?
Yeah, I'm into. We need more youth, and Aaron does a great job, hustling our guys and gals. But we need, of course, we'll do anything to help any league if they're going to promote the sport and promote the young people and get us going. we're building something for the people to go. We're building a ladder for people. So let them climb.
We are.
So the focus of the company is obviously on the top level of the game, right? That's our raison d'etre. That's why we're here 10 years in. But obviously, and I'll reiterate what Anthony says, we only benefit if the amateur side of the game is strong, right? We need a strong organization and a strong leagues. We need, because they're the ones who are on the ground with the people that we're never gonna be able to touch or see or find, because they're not going to see us unless they get into the sport that way, or unless they get it. We'll talk about some of the other things we're doing. I know we're going to talk about that in a sec, but and then so we're also then helping with the DP tours. We're trying to work with organizations throughout the country to really bring them along. In terms of if we're going to run local leagues and things like that, again, that's not really our mission. Certainly not averse to seeing us do that in the future or work for our mission is more of a partner than a leader in terms of the league level.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on it. That's not our core mission from a business standpoint. We have to be responsible for our our business purposes. There was a quick question up there that talked about garnering and developing young fans and things. And a couple of things we've got. There you go, to cultivate new and young fans. So good place to talk about some of the initiatives that we want to do this year, right? Not only do we want to do this show, we have other ideas that we want to do some long format interview shows. That's probably more for the stodgy or older people, but we want to expand what we're doing social media wise to do more short format content to capture the experience of the younger viewer and the younger consumer out there, right? To convey the great parts and exciting parts of the sport in a bite-sized format.
Yeah, we're really being intentional about that this year. That's the reason that we've got this podcast together, right? It's the reason we brought on, and I'll give another shout out to KJ. It's the reason we brought KJ on as a marketing person, a media person for us, because she's got the chops in that we don't have. And if you want to be successful at something you're not innately good at, you got to find somebody who's good at it. And I'm confident that we've got somebody who is. And so we definitely are looking to do that. And we'll talk about things like PopCon. I don't know if you want me to go there now, but that's
it's across the bottom of your screen now, folks. So read up on that information, and this is exact the place to intro a great opportunity that the CDC and its players have, going into something like PopCon. So Pete, if you may, give us a little take on like what PopCon is. It is what it sounds, and then the great opportunities to have a dart company there on site.
Sure. PopCon is the largest comic and pop culture convention in the United States. And so they're at the Indiana Convention Center in Indianapolis. Seems like all roads lead to Indianapolis these days for whatever reason. But so we actually were blessed to be able to have a booth there. It's a fairly large booth in a really prime location on the exhibit hall. We're really trying to connect with people that wouldn't otherwise find us, right? The point of us going to PopCon is to bring darts to a group that is probably not going to get exposed to it otherwise. I mean, they might have seen Luke Littler on a podcast, but they don't really get darts, right? That's not their core audience. But also, they're fans. We know they embrace fandom, and we can bring them. And we also know that a lot of them really enjoying the costume and the dress up thing, right? So why not darts? Because that's a big part of being a fan of the game of darts.
Sure, it's a big component to the dart spectator experience, right?
So we'll be there. It's at the Indianapolis Convention Center, April 26th through 28th. We'll have information that'll go up on the site. But Angelo DiGiulio is really being amazing on our end, just kind of leading that effort, trying to organize the team. He's done just a fantastic effort, and it's going to be wonderful to see it. We'll have 4 players there. We'll have Alex Spellman, we'll have Jason Watt, we'll have Jim Long, and we'll have, why am I blanking on my fourth
Jules.
player? Jules Van
Jules.
Dongen. Thank you. Hey, I was just waiting for that wonderful graphic to come up. That's why. Jules Van Dongen. The mind is the second thing to go at. You know that. So really excited to bring the four there. We'll be doing, not just exhibitions, but bull shot challenges, some coaching, interacting, autographs, trying to bring people in to this game we all love. And if we can find ways to do other things like this, to bring darts to people that wouldn't otherwise engage, it's gonna, talk about the leagues. If they become passionate, they want to play darts, well, where are they gonna go? They're gonna go to a local league, right? And so that hopefully will also not only create the fans at the top level, but might get people into the lower levels to then start to progress. So I'm stoked about the fact that we're gonna be there.
Yeah, an opportunity like PopCon is you're going to get to see the dart world mesh with, actors from Breaking Bad and Walking Dead and crossing over all of that sort of, environment and convey to people like, hey, do you just like having a good time? Yes. Well, come on and have a good time. Right. So it's an amazing opportunity for us. And we're just so insanely excited about it.
It's like 30,000 people or so. We'd be like
30,000 people a weekend. Yeah,
they're gonna hand out those flyers, and they get so that's good stuff. We're very fortunate for them to basically to have invited us there, so it's great.
Well, let's start heading towards home. As I highly suspected, to get myself and my two friends, Mr. Irete and Mr. Citera, there was not going to be any shortage of content or talking. So we have gone a while, but I'm happy that we've done it, and it's been a good one. So we came out of the World Championships quickly. We got a note because I know we're both going to want to talk about this young man. But firstly, we saw Jules Van Dongen, keep that form up, go get his card back. So just to sort of marry those two parts that we said, World Championship doesn't retain, but now boom, he's got the card back, and we hope to see that form continue. We saw some good performances in Players Championships, and now we've got the UK Open looming for him, right?
The UK Open, I love that event. As you know, it's one of my favorite events on the dart calendar. And we've got, look at the players we got in it. I think Jules can make a deep run in that event.
I fully concur. I mean, right? The form he's been. So now let's sort of talk about our own. We touched on earlier about having young players and a young player be crafted a little, if you will, and have an idea of what this is supposed to be and be a professional. How happy is this continent that Danny Lauby is now an official? He can go into the pub, pull out his wallet, and say, I am a card-carrying professional dart player. I mean, Danny Lauby goes and gets his tour card. I mean, what a great moment for us as a company and for all of us that have known that young man for a good amount of years.
Yeah. A kid,
and I know Mr. Irete first.
I mean, the little kid.
I know you have.
Remember the first days I'm going, hey, what can I do? Because he was there hanging out with his dad and seeing all that. So he was being approached by everybody. And I think everybody looked at him in a certain way. And I think that hit a nerve. Now, here's a kid who's a great drummer. I mean, he's got the right kind of rhythm and is known for throwing really, really fast. And I always said to myself, is that going to last? Well, it certainly did. And I think the kids kept the beat all the way through his young career. And now, like I say, he's got a card and he's having a good time. So love the guy.
Yeah, happy to see that he got his card. Yeah, and it's been a long wait. A lot of time and effort put in to get it, and it's going to be interesting to see where things go with him.
Absolutely. So now we bring that all together as we not only get the cross border, but then we hit our circuit proper. Right, we open up middle of May 17th, 18th in, as you said, in Indianapolis there, Pete. But part of that is not only getting everybody started for the year, right? Those chase for the points to make the Continental Cup. There's also opportunities in that first weekend to play for a chance to play on stage at Madison Square Garden. So keeping with that theme of these players coming through World Championships, and the next big showcase is May 31st, June 1st, PDC US Masters and North American qualifiers, right? Where we may see some of those players we just spoke about, and we'll get a better idea in the coming weeks on what that field looks like. And then there'll be some opportunities for players to come in there. So quickly give us, our qualifiers, and then, we've all experienced how much fun the Madison Square Garden event has been in the last couple of years.
Yeah, so
Peter into David.
We're running two qualifiers, weekend one. We've got one Friday at 6 p.m. and then a second one Saturday at, I want to say 5 p.m. Don't hold me to that. I'm trying to remember the schedule in my head.
Yep.
So we'll have registration open. Those are open. Certainly you'll be able to come out and look for your chance to qualify. We'll have some spots available, and it'll get you into the biggest event in North America, which is the U.S. Darts Masters, and probably more importantly for the North American, candidly, the North American Championship, because that's the path to the World Championship, the guaranteed spot, right? You can lock your spot up early without having to worry about how you perform on CDC. So I'll tell you, again, having had conversations with Matt Porter and Dave Allen, they're really happy with where ticket sales are at this point. We're going to need to hopefully we get a really big close. We want to see that entire theater filled on the Saturday night, like all the way up into that third level. We want to see that filled on the Saturday night.
All the way.
Yeah, all the way. Tickets are available. Ticketmaster.com. You can find it. Get the link on the PDC site, actually. It's probably the easiest way to get it, because the link itself has got, periods and dashes, and I can't give it to you. But go to the PDC site, pdc.tv. On the first page, the home page, you'll see New York pre-sale on now. Click there, get your tickets. It is a special place. I've used that word a lot, but it really is. David, talk about the crowd and what it's like as a show.
Well, if you're not going to go to the World Championships, then you have to end up in Madison Square Garden. It's just the venue itself is real. Sorry?
Here. I second that. Bravo. Here.
I mean, you walk away thinking that you are part of something, because you are. And everything that you've been learning and looking at other television shows, it's right in our backyard. And just if you plan ahead, it's I can tell you, it's New York. It's not cheap, but you got to be there. It's something you'll take with you forever. It's like going to a big rock concert, and you can pack in with your friends and make a big deal about it. And it's just, it really is fabulous. But for you guys that are sitting back there, not wanting to go out and play darts a lot, but you're the best in your town, well, why don't you come to the qualifier and see? You might end up on stage. It could happen to you. So there are some great players out there that we haven't hit yet, and I think they would all enjoy going and seeing what happens at the Madison Square Gardens in the theater. It's fantastic.
Perfectly said, my friend. Perfectly said. And Peter touched on a little bit about registration for that will be out soon, and we will have out the information for our circuit itself, the Championship Dart Circuit, this coming week. Correct, Amundo, Peter?
We'll correct, Amundo.
Venues and everything out.
All
right.
Just locking down the graphics, the creative that goes with it. Yeah. Absolutely. Are you landing the plane? Because I was told it was an hour, and you're paying me union scale. So at this point, we're in.
It's like MSG, man. That's it. If we hit 11 o'clock here, man, that's it. We go to triple time. The union guys get paid, and no more beer sales.
That's right.
So I want to thank L. David, Irete, and Peter Citera, my two beloved partners in this whole journey, for joining me today. What a great way to kick off the first episode. Also, certainly have to acknowledge and thank the people behind the scenes, the boys in the back there, Jeff McMahon, who's the man behind the buttons, making all of these pretty pictures and graphics and everything happen. The graphics that you see, Vicky Romero, Nils Nelson back there, hanging with you all in the chat. And we definitely look forward to, as this grows and progresses to be more, interactive and get a lot more feedback from everybody. So we hope that you've enjoyed what you've experienced tonight, and thank the overall leadership of our producer, KJ McGlynn. So thank you, KJ, very much for getting the ship in order and getting us launched. So I am just thrilled and hope you enjoyed it. And that is a wrap for this episode. And I want to tell you to please be nice to another human being today. And we will see you soon.
I love that.
Thanks,
Cheers.
all.